Well, look at that. It's been a whole week. And when we skip a week, it feels like it's been a year. I feel like I haven't been on this thing in a decade. It just shows you how much I missed the stream. Welcome back, everyone, to Thursday nights with the Gabbing Gonks. That's right. It is Andor season as well. So these are always especially fun because we have fresh Star Wars right off the press. But before we get into Andor, let's go around the pyramid, the triangle, and say hello to everyone. Jimmy, get us kicked off, man. How's your week been going? How are you doing since we last spoke?
Well, life. It hurts sometimes, but it is what it is.
That's right.
I've been keeping myself busy with plenty of Star Wars and plenty of content.
That's good. Jimmy's been hitting the books hard. We'll talk about that throughout the stream. Literally hitting them hard. Ben, my friend, up in the north, how are you doing? How are things going?
Well, the wall is holding. The winter is coming. We're talking about the north, but right. I'm happy that Jim finished the Thrawn trilogy. We got to chat a little bit before we started rolling the show, and we sort of agreed that despite our differences of opinion, some books are just that hold that special place in the Star Wars timeline that you would recommend it to any fan because it's such a beginning, such an important piece of Star Wars franchise that you want to go and check it out. But for me, I have been doing my Star Wars gaming on the go. I finally got Steam Deck. I kind of got jealous.
Ooh.
I don't know if I mentioned it last time or not. Maybe I'm bragging, but I've tested Shadows of the Empire.
Okay.
Runs pretty well. I've tried both A Force Unleashed 1 and 2. Dude, it runs like a dream.
Oh.
If you are a Star Wars fan who wants to jump in some like retro gaming, because Steam has quite a few of those, man, the Steam Deck is a dream. So
that's fun. That's exciting.
And we're playing some Dark Forces.
That's cool. That is really cool. Well, I might not have Steam Deck, but what I do have is a Navarro Star Wars mug for this evening. Let's go. May the 4th here. May the 4th Starbucks release some, because Starbucks does like a mug for every state, and so they did like Star Wars locations. So I got Navarro here.
Say they made a Naboo one, and I gotta get it for Gail.
I gotta get a hot one to remind me of cold and severe Russia.
That's it. Remind you of home. I love, guys, it's fall. We were talking about before the stream, everyone in chat. I love fall, I love winter. Nothing like hot coffee, chilly evenings. I'm all about it. And luckily, we have Star Wars to keep us warm because we have Andor every Wednesday night, and we're going to talk about that to lead off. I will say one thing, though. Rings of Power finales tonight, or should I say tomorrow. We'll be curious how that ends up. We also have Tales of the Jedi, which we'll talk about a little bit more later. That comes out on the 26th. And we still have House of the Dragon for a couple more weeks. There's just like so much stuff coming out right now. It's really a unique time. These shows are really all competing for your attention, competing for different nights of the week. And I think all of the shows, what I've really enjoyed is that they're all so different. They all feel like they provide something different to the table. There's this kind of gritty, violent, full of drama, political show in House of the Dragon. There's more of a light fantasy, which it seems to be a little more carefree, a little more joyous, a little more family friendly, Rings of Power. Then you have Andor, which is just this totally fresh look at Star Wars, that we're going to talk about in detail. And then animated Star Wars later this month. It's just really cool. I really enjoy that. There's something out for everyone. You don't have to like it all, but there's something out there. And with that being said, guys, Andor for me, I mean, and I was thinking about this throughout the day, and when I recorded my video last night about Andor episode 6, there will be spoilers, guys, throughout the video. So if you haven't seen it yet, I highly recommend it. Here's the thing. I struggle to talk about Andor and make reviews anymore because I feel like I'm repeating myself. Because what works just continues to work. Like the things that stick out, like I feel like I'm saying the same things every week. And the Blue Pig actually kind of hit it. There's good dialogue. There's good story. There's great cinematography. And I keep repeating this in all my reviews, and I'm trying to cut back. But there's so much tension on screen. There's so much suspense that it's just what resonates with me. It's every episode, everyone could die at any minute. You feel outside of the characters whose fate we already know, like the Mon Mothmas, and it feels like any of these new characters we're introduced to could be killed at any moment. And I think that adds real stakes to the show and just fills it with such tension. And so when we talk about it tonight, I'm going to repeat a lot of the same things that I've said for weeks. And I'm just going to give my quick one-line thought and then pass it around. I thought episode 6 was fantastic. I thought as a 3-episode arc, episode 4, 5, and 6 told another really great story. And it pairs very well with the first 3 episodes. I'm very impressed how they were able to kind of give us our own little movie, our own little arc with characters we just met and tell a pretty fulfilling story. That was a really good, well-designed little segment there. So I am extremely impressed with Andor, and I loved episode 6. And I'll talk about all the reasons why later. But before I do so, let's go around. Ben, Andor Fandor over here. How did you like episode 6, The Eye? What did you think about it?
I would say it's my favorite episode to date. Mm-hmm. And what really surprises me, like I'm still, don't get me wrong, guys, I'm still a little bit on the fence. I'm a little bit reserved because I want to see how the first season ends, how we're going to evaluate the whole package. Yeah. But as it stands, what I appreciate the most about the show is that I don't have to run and make like a rave review about each and every episode. What really impresses me is that the way they approach the material is very mature. They pick a very specific style. They knew what the story is going to be, and they're sticking to their guns. Yep. They're not jumping all over the place. Like I found that even Mandalorian, which is arguably the better of the live action shows up until now, it had an identity crisis. It had to like jump around here and there with the cameras and all of that stuff. Yes, that guy, that dude over there. And not a bad show, not to bring Mandalorian down, or its fans down. It's still a decent outing there, but it's hard to defend its pacing. It's very uneven. What really impresses me about Andor, they're leading us somewhere. And I was specifically waiting not to review episodes 4, 5, and 6 because I knew I want to evaluate it as arcs. And Josh, you already said it. The first 3 episodes, I think, was the right format to give us because you see all 3 and you get what they're doing. If you only see episode 4 by itself, you're kind of like, okay, next week, where are we going with this? You start feeling a little anxious.
Sure.
By the time you finish this second arc with the next 3 episodes, it's like, I see. They keep driving the point. It's like the Rogue One. Nobody expected it. I personally didn't want it. And it ended up being like one of the best Disney era materials out there. Mm-hmm. And the same is happening with the show.
Yeah. Well said. And we'll dive into, I like some of the points you called out. We'll dive into those here shortly. Ooh, I like this right here in chat before I go to Jimmy. It's like Tom Clancy meets Star Wars. That's a good call. I like that. That is a very well said. Jimmy, my friend, episode 6. You don't have a review up because you're here to tell us live your thoughts. So give it to us.
Yeah, you do the 6 reviews real quick though. We got some kind of cool breaking news that just came out about 30-40 minutes ago. Harrison Ford is joining the MCU.
I saw that. Yes, he'll be playing.
He'll be playing the role of General Ross in Captain America: New World Order and Thunderbolts.
There we go. They looks like that Disney money still pays, baby. Harrison Ford, let's go.
I mean, anytime you get him to play like some authority figure, he always crushes it. So playing a general, he's gonna do great.
That'll be fun.
But real quick, because I know we didn't cover it last week, episode 5 was really good and left me very stressed, leading up to a fantabulous crescendo with episode 6. Yes, I said fantabulous and crescendo. I don't know why. It was gorgeous. It was great. The stress still kept me going. Like I couldn't take my eyes off the screen because I didn't want to miss anything. And there's a lot of moments in this show where if you like look away, you will miss something big.
Mm-hmm.
Yep.
It's a shame, but it's so good.
What I really enjoy about the show, Jimmy kind of helped segue there, and I'll take our first point to be around I'll call it the peripherals, right? Outside of the acting, the dialogue, let's talk about the visuals and the score. The visuals of the episode I thought were really, really enjoyable. We have the background now as this big eye, this cool meteor shower that happens once a year. But what I really enjoy about the show is there's heavy, heavy practical effects. And not so heavy that it feels cheap. Like, okay, the sets here are looking a little bit budget. I think it's blended in such a way where the practical effects add a real grittiness to it, like we've talked about, like that remind us of the original trilogy. But then the CGI was really clean where it needed to be. This was good CGI. We had our little TIE fighter chase scene. Nothing crazy. I mean, it was
beautiful
exciting.
Shots.
Really pretty cinematography and framing of the shots. So I'm very impressed with how they've been able to give us that practical effect, but also give us some fun CGI eye candy as well. And the score, I mean, I've had people come into my comments on the channel and be like, man, the show isn't it doesn't feel like Star Wars, and the score isn't Star Wars. And I couldn't, everyone has their own opinion, obviously, but I couldn't disagree more. I love that this feels like its own, even from the theme. The theme starts and it's this whole different vibe, and I just love how it brings such a different feel to the whole show. But then you have these visuals like TIE fighters that are familiar and comfortable, and the dress of the Imperials, and it's like this new kind of music. It's just so exciting. I'm probably overstating it, but for me it's really refreshing in a really good way.
And I don't think you are overstating it, because it very much fits the theme of Star Wars. Back when George was making the first Star Wars, he came up with the idea when he was wanting some of the sound effects for the movie. He described it as an organic soundtrack, and I feel that with the music in Andor, it's very limited, it's very scarce. It feels organic in the scene. It feels like this is exactly what should be playing, and it's very, very minimal, very much like the score for the movie The Witch, because one instrument was built to make the score for The Witch. It's something called the Apprehension Engine. It's got a bunch of little like bells and like saws on it, and it makes all this different type of noise, but it doesn't do a whole lot, yet it carries the entire film. And I think that's exactly what we're seeing with Andor.
That's a great point, Jimmy. And I have some things I want to add on to that later on about some of the aspects of storytelling. Ben, visuals. I mean, I know you're an old school guy. How do you like the practical effects? How do you like the costume design? Is it working for you? Is it effective?
I was always on board with the CGI ever since I saw the original Jurassic Park, because it was so seamless there. And Steven Spielberg really set the benchmark of a visual cinematic wizard who's using the tools in his box to tell a story that doesn't take you out of the experience, but brings you into it. And even during the prequels era, most of the CGI was just phenomenal, man. It was just so pretty, so good looking. But when we went to episode 3 and it was nothing but CGI, then you kind of started telling it apart. And I honestly started feeling a little bit bored. I'm like, come on, man. Like, those beautiful scenes and architecture that you see of Naboo, you wanted more of that stuff. When you look at Andor, at times it almost feels like it's like BBC, documentary. Like, are we in the
I get what you mean,
mountains somewhere in like Northern Ireland? Like, where are we, man? Is it Scotland? But the way that you properly said it, the way that they use CGI props, like where that sacred ground piece is dead, and where the dam is, and where the TIE fighter jumps into his cabin. It's seamless. I'm watching it. Yep. I can't point to anything and say, well, that's fake, that's real, that's CGI. That's not. It's seamless. It's like one continuous picture, and it never really interrupts the viewing experience. I don't like excessive, overemphasized cinematography. Like Guy Ritchie is my perfect example. He's the most skilled, superficial cinematographer, and that he knows what he's doing. And if people enjoy the type of films that he does, he doesn't pretend it or beat about the bush. He's all about visuals. I get that. I personally, my eye gets stressed out looking at that for too long. But when you look at this shot is amazing. When you look at it, there's no shaky camera for no reason. You don't get a single shot without breaking for 25 minutes just for the sake of being cool and fancy. What Andor does, it approaches the craft very maturely. I keep reiterating the word. What it does is every single frame, every single shot, every piece of a musical cue is there in service of the story.
Yeah, well said. Really well said by both of you guys. This shot, I'm glad you called out, Ben, because this shot is a standout where we have a lot of CGI in here, but it looks, especially in the actual episode, it never looks fake. It never looks cheap. It looks completely organic. Real. It looks real, exactly. And I'm extremely impressed with this celestial event. They really gave us something beautiful there. It was a really cool scene. It was just a really, really fun scene. And what I enjoyed about the episode so much as well is we get another kind of humanoid planet, right? Familiar to our own, and kind of it's a mountainous, but you have this culture at hand, right? Who celebrates this yearly event that they view as kind of divine. And it's building on another planet, right? It's just showing you how diverse these people are. Now, this is similar to maybe Native American cultures or other nomadic cultures throughout American history, or throughout world history, excuse me. And it's just cool that like, yeah, this stuff kind of exists in Star Wars too. It's fun. It's not some over the top crazy techno society. It's like a simple nomadic people who enjoy like the beauty of the nature around them. I think that's kind of a cool thing as well. Makes it feel just more lived in. And what really stuck out to me this episode as we transition to the performances and the dialogue, which continues to be just extremely impressive. I really, really like Kenobi, and I really enjoy Mandalorian, especially season 2. And there's been other shows on Disney Plus that I've liked, but the reason I continue to call this the best show on Disney Plus is just the performances feel like award winning. Like they're good. They're very, very good. And the writing is very solid. And with actors that are not, we don't have a lot of star power here. These aren't like, oh, well, they've got so-and-so who's just a genius, right? There's no kind of known commodity here. We're getting a bunch of fresh actors who've probably been in, good smaller roles, but here it just works in such a really, really exciting way. And one thing that really stuck out to me watching yesterday's episode is, and this is for me, it might not be for everyone, but these performances and what Andor has shown us in 6 episodes has really, really enhanced the original trilogy and Star Wars as a whole. Because I think we have the way that the original trilogy kind of showed us the hero's tale of Luke. And when we watch the prequel trilogy, we have, Anakin and his fall. We're always following the Jedi, and we're following these people in power and these people, the high ups who are fighting, these battles. What we see here is really what the consequences of war are to the average individual, what suffering under the Empire was like, what these people had to give up, what the suspicion and the fear was among the common people, that you didn't really get to. You were told about that, but you never got to see it. And so as we get into the meat of the episode, where a lot of these rebels were trying to stand up to the big bad guy in their own way, and we'll talk about that more as well, but they really just showed to me like what was going on in the galaxy, why Luke was fighting this battle, what was at stake in these people's lives, in a way I feel like I haven't seen before, outside of like, oh, they're big bad and they destroy a planet. Well, that's a little like, that's almost too easy. But seeing this kind of low level suffering and how they've basically killed this planet's local community and their local religion, they've just squeezed it out, and how they've continued to do that throughout the galaxy, I just think this is really enhanced Star Wars in a really mature way. I think it's really, really good for Star Wars as a whole. And that really stuck out to me throughout, with just the performances and the dialogue. And especially in episode 5, which we didn't talk about, we have this character whose name is Nemec, who is like this young revolutionary. And some of his like manifesto, like he makes this comment in episode 5, and I'm going to like butcher it. But it was around the lines of like, when there's 40, when you commit 40 atrocities, they all kind of blur together almost. Like it's a lot worse if you only do one terrible thing. It's easy for people to focus on it and call it out. But when they just commit atrocities everywhere, it's almost like it just gets washed out. And it was just this really cool idea about what people would be thinking at this time. So I'm rambling a little bit, but that's what sticks out to me in this episode and in Andor as a whole. And
that's the best part, because Nemec's character was so cool, but like he had a lot of very lengthy dialogue about like the inner workings of the Empire and what them as like just the little people mean to them. Here's the best part: his entire character and like those speeches he would give, that is the definition of woke, and everyone likes it.
Well, in the way
I have lines to add to that, Nemec.
Do it.
Just to clarify, Nemec is a young man with the book who writes the manifesto, right?
Yep.
We're talking about the same character. I can't help but compare, because we constantly do that. It's inescapable to what is our top tier entertainment, and you guys know mine. It's always been for the past several years, Stranger Things.
Yeah,
just how immaculately everything connects for me personally, from every perspective, every angle. With Andor, I'm not there yet. I'm not 100% cooked. It's what really got me excited, what really got me like breathe out and feel relaxed, is that it's the best Star Wars show I've seen.
Sure.
As far as live action is concerned. But there's still a couple of things that I'm noticing, and it particularly has to do with the dialogues, is where they need to dial it down just a bit, because it begins to feel like somebody's trying to impress me. if you read a lot of literature,
Mm-hmm.
if you watch a lot of movies like war dramas, but not necessarily action centric, but more story driven and character driven, like Quentin Tarantino always compares Hollywood cinema versus Russian cinema. He said that Russian cinema is not necessarily about linear story from A to Z, it's more character centric, and Andor is. But I felt like the director and the showrunner is so in a bit. It's a very minor nitpick, don't get me wrong, guys.
Yeah, of course.
But there are a couple of parts there where I feel like okay, you're trying too hard here a little bit. That's how I felt with his manifesto, when he starts barraging you with all these clearly what needed to be like these deeper thoughts on like, hey, what the heck are we doing here? Why are we fighting this war? He is asking the right questions, but the delivery felt a little bit forced. And then we're back to the basics where Andor is like, bam! I'm like, oh. And there's so much context there and so much tension and so much storytelling that in a way, words become cheap. What the manifesto is saying doesn't nearly describe enough what the actions in the show do, if that makes sense.
It does a little bit, and I like a little bit that Nemec is a little bit naive. Like they have him a little bit like he's almost over glorified the ideals when it's a lot grittier than that, right? Is what
it's
the
like
show.
A Russian Revolution intelligentsia. If you guys, I don't know if you we're learning this in history classes, where the younger upper class got to defend the working class and saying, well, they need a revolution. We're there to protect them and pave the new way for them. It's like, what the hell do you know about their lifestyle? What do you know about the realities of war? We just have been to the First World War.
Yeah.
You might have these grand ideas.
That's him, yeah.
And as we see in this episode, things kind of like turned around on him a little.
Yeah, and I think that was a little bit like it was a little.
It was deliberate.
It was, and I like about the crew in general. And we'll talk about. I call them the heist crew. I don't know if they gave themselves a name, but the heist crew from the last few episodes, I really, really did enjoy. And again, spoilers, folks, if you haven't already noticed, I really did enjoy how they just never trusted each other. Like they never had these warm, fuzzy, like, you're the guy that we needed here. Like they all were very much uncertain of each other up to the very end. And there's a lot of subtlety that I like that the show does. They don't like hit you over the head. But Skeen, who eventually turns at the end, and you realize he's like, bro, I'm actually the one who's been looking for this. Like, I'm just trying to get out of these credits, man. Like, I'm just out here for myself.
Yeah.
In the firefight, you notice he's like not providing great cover fire. Have you like they flashed him a couple times where it wasn't like immediately obvious. You're like, okay, maybe he's just not very good. But then in the context of the episode, you realize like, oh, he probably was pretty comfortable with people getting picked off throughout because he was looking.
He was shook a little bit. You could tell.
Yeah, I liked how all the deaths were pretty unglorious, and that sounds like kind of morbid, but all these heroes, these characters who are sacrificing everything for a little dent in because let's call it what it is. Those credits, I mean, when you have an all-powerful, dark Sith Lord in the Empire, the credits will be there. But they're like trying their way to spark hope and to do this thing. And they're giving their lives, and they will be forgotten in the history books. No one's gonna remember these people in the story of the Republic, of the rebellion. These are forgotten people who died in the bottom of some rebel or imperial base in some godforsaken planet. And they didn't die these like slow motion heroic deaths. They just like picked off, lay there dead, crushed. Think about this. You survive this whole heist and you get crushed by a container in the getaway ship. What a lame way to go. You don't have some hero like he didn't sacrifice himself for the greater good, just crushed, because that's what war is. These people die unceremonious, sad, but they're giving themselves up to this larger cause. And it's just, I really liked that it wasn't like they had these grand sacrifices. It was like just picked off, dead, like nothing. And that, I thought that was really, really mature of them to do. It was not like they had this happy send off.
It was very real.
Exactly.
And
exactly.
I started to notice that because the one rebel that was in disguise as the captain or whatever he was, that he kept walking around the base and he would come and check on them,
Lieutenant Gorn?
Yeah.
Gorn? Yeah. Mm-hmm.
When he gets shot, he falls to the ground and you never see him again.
He's just dead.
It was just like out of sight, out of mind. I was like, wait, wasn't that the... And then everyone
until
else...
they zoom out, until they fly away and you see his body just in the background. Yeah.
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 Yeah,
and
what has the... Sorry, go ahead.
I was going to say, like, Nemec, just like, it was so awful. Because it's again showing it's like, it's not every death is going to be like quick and painless, It's not one blaster bolt and but being crushed. dude.
And here's what quick before, just to go off Jimmy's point. When you think like, oh, they're going to take him to the doctor and he's going to be saved. Skeen just wanted to do that so he could try to get the money and get away. Like, he just wanted to divert them off the plan so he could betray them and get out of there. And the kid dies anyway. Nemec dies anyway. And it's like, okay, like there's no happiness here, right? And I just like that they did this heroic mission with these beautiful meteors. And it's like, we did it. And they all just die terribly. He has to shoot Skeen, gets only 30,000 credits, and they leave. And it's like, it's just so good. It was so realistic and believable in that way.
But and even then, just like looking at even their actions once the firefight started happening, like they started to doubt themselves. Like when they're pinned down and one of them, is just like, cover me, I'm gonna go for it. He takes a couple shots and then he's done. He's like, I can't keep my head out this entire time.
Yeah.
It felt very much in reverse to what happens in Rogue One, where I frankly didn't anticipate for everyone to die in Rogue One, because there was no need for that, because past the explosion of the first Death Star, there's still rebels out there. They could have just somewhere got lost somewhere in the rebel groups. Yeah, and we never see them again. There was no reason to do that. But it really felt very contrived, almost like a domino effect. It's like, oh, and by the way, we're going to start mounting tension here. And first the droid goes, and you sort of know that it's like, I am the one with the Force, the Imwe Chera.
I am the one, the Force,
the way that he dies, And none of the deaths felt meaningful to me. They just felt like out of necessity. Here, it felt like the storyteller, the writer of the script, he set up this intricate chess game. He's like, okay, I'm going to position all the pieces here. The audience is not going to know what happens there. Obviously, if you understand plot structure and hints and foreshadowing, you sort of are going to pick up on this. Yeah. And the showrunner actually wants you to do that. He wants you to flex your brain muscles for a little bit and try to notice it. But for the rest of the audience, you kind of just enjoy the exhilaration of this heist, and you see the chess game in real time, if that makes sense.
Yep.
Things are just happening organically. Boom, this guy's obviously he's trying to cross that floor to make it to the escape pod, and of course he doesn't make it. Boom, he gets blasted. Would that happen? Yes, it definitely would. And then, like you mentioned, with the kid, the way he hides behind this thing, and then the momentum takes everything away, and it just crushes his chest. Would that happen? Yes. It everything has a place in the episode. And never there wasn't a single thing, even the final, draw in a quick blast.
Oh yeah,
it made total sense. Like, oh, I didn't expect that one. I didn't see that one coming. But it fits like a glove. Everything is very well organized.
I didn't this kind of speaks to why I like the show. I didn't suspect Skeen was going to turn, because it seemed like that crew was going to be this ragtag group that we were going to like love, and they were going to have like great character moments. But Andor isn't that show. Andor isn't some like, this is not an invincible crew of rebels fighting the good fight and always getting away. This is real. This is what it is. These are people these are not, plot armor covered people. They're just average people living in the galaxy trying to make a stand, and they don't get away. That's just what happens. And I like that. And
I was thinking about like all the predictions, because we knew something was going to happen in this episode. We knew it wasn't going to be all happy, especially with Tony Gilroy saying, don't get too attached. We mean it now.
Yeah.
But I noticed when everyone was taking their predictions of like, who do you think someone's going to die? Who do you think is going to be? And I'm like, why is it someone? Why is it just one person? And I told a lot of people, it's like, I really think all of them are going to die.
Yeah, I kind of do too.
That's nearly what happened. Like I don't remember any of these characters' names except Nemec, but the two girls, I know they made it out.
Cinta and Vel.
Yeah, Cinta and Vel lived. Everyone else did not. That's about what I was expecting. I wasn't like, I'll pick off one at a time. No, you're going to lose everybody. It's not going to be this easy.
I saw one death, and it's the kid. He would immediately, right from the beginning of the episode, he had the red Star Trek shirt on top of him. He might have he's like,
well, and that was
you're
the
gonna
thing.
Be fine, kid. You're gonna survive this.
I knew he was gonna die.
Bitch, you're going.
Yeah. I knew he was gonna die, but they were like, "Oh, we're gonna take him to the doctor." I was like, "Oh, they're gonna save him. They're gonna save him." They're like, "No, he just died on the operating table." I was like, "Oh, okay."
That was pretty brutal. But
I was like, "Oh."
With Nemec in particular, I was like, he's either going to die or he's going to be like a terrifying berserker
Oh,
no in between.
Yeah,
no
guys,
in
is
between.
it me or the doctor gave off the little vibe from the Ocho of Bestoon a little bit with those?
Yeah,
with the
right?
eyes. Yeah, he looked like a cross between Ochi and Maz Kanata.
And Maz Kanata,
Yeah,
yeah.
yeah.
I thought Maz Kanata.
Say, and his name is incredible.
What is
Dr. Quad Paw.
Quad Paw.
I love it. It's right up there with Therm Scissor Punch.
Yeah.
I'm sure there's some deep symbolism here that I'm not able to see. But isn't it interesting that all this like brutal, heartbreaking, heist where they escape but not really super successful, they're betrayed, a lot of people die, it doesn't go off without a hitch. The commander has a heart attack, by the way, in the middle of everything and just dies, and it's like just this bloodbath. Nothing ends warm and fuzzy. But then you flash to like Luthen, who's like, oh, we did it, and it's like
that scene got me because I wasn't expecting, because when he's like, you got anything from Eldani, and he's like, what? Like, I thought he was like, oh, my cover's blown. I thought he was about to freak out.
That's what he was thinking. Yeah, he was thinking that, I think.
And then he goes back there and he's just like,
yeah, he's like dancing. I'm like, but isn't it interesting that like how it's not really a celebratory moment. It is, but it's brutal. At what cost? It makes you, I just really like how it challenges. Like, it's not like some glorified, like the good guys won and we struck a blow against the Empire. It's like all of them died. They were betrayed at the end by one guy.
Yet, right? He doesn't.
No, he doesn't.
A report on his stable of exact losses and who ditched.
Right, but it just shows you that's what the cost of war is. Like, even the victories are not like, it wasn't like Andor was like, oh, nice win, guys. Hug it out. Way to go. Strike one against the Empire. It was like, give me my 30,000 credits. I'm getting out of here. Like, this is terrible. This kid's crushed to death, sitting here on an operating table. Had to shoot skiing. All the other dudes were shot. I don't even know
where I am.
Yeah, I don't know what planet I'm on. All the other dudes are shot. Like, it's just, I really like that, because that is what war is, right? Yeah. It's brutal. It's not as glorious as a lot of media makes it out to be, especially when you follow like a heroic crew on a mission. So I really enjoyed that aspect of the episode. And again, I really am impressed with how it does feel like Star Wars still. It really does. And in particular, I really enjoyed we got our first look at the Senate, which I'm not sure we'll go to the Imperial Senate a lot throughout the show. I hope we do, because I think it'll be cool to see what it was like to be on the Senate during what are you even doing at the Senate at that point? But a formality, but a show, like a pretend, it's a farce, right? And it's just so just gloomy. Just Coruscant is so gloomy, and so but it looks like Star Wars, but the music's not the same and the vibe is not the same. It's fun. I really enjoy that about it.
I wanted to bring this up last week as you're mentioning Coruscant, because remember when I we all text each other, for those in the chat that don't know, but I texted them the morning after I watched episode 5, and I said that there's a great meme in this that we're going to have to discuss.
Oh my gosh.
We didn't get to. And I don't know if you guys ever caught on to it, but our new favorite character that was dubbed Cereal
was eating cereal. The whole episode. Yes, that's true. I thought the same thing. Yeah, I think I said it in my video.
I was like, cereal eating cereal.
I was like, it's our boy. They took it. We didn't see any of cereal this episode.
How the show deliberately, it's a color scheme of the entire show, but specifically works effectively on Coruscant, where it's so much devoid of color. Like the Emperor is draining, he's sucking the life out of the heart of the galaxy, and it's so bleak. And when my Mothma was standing there, and it's like only a few pods carrying representatives from their respective worlds, I don't know why. This is completely unrelated to the scene as I'm watching, and I'm like, please bring CGI Tarkin back. Please bring CGI Tarkin back. I want CGI Tarkin back somewhere on the screen. He needs to be in there saying lines. Something about that version of this very militant, dark Coruscant makes me believe that now you can bring this rabbit out of your magic hat, the CGI Tarkin, and he would add so much more gravitas to what the Emperor is doing them, how they're all... Remember in that scene, which we're going to talk about, the ISB, when they bring everybody's attention, he's like, hey, you're not going to rest now. Hold your people, you're not on high alert. Man, you need the boss here. You need the dude to click his shoes, like walk in, and they're like, You may fire when ready.
If that's the case, I don't think it's going to be Tarkin. I think it's going to be Yularen.
I really confirmed, right, for the show.
Is he?
Oh yeah, but I'm just thinking, you're talking ISB. The first name that comes to mind is always Yularen. So
Yularen, yeah, Wolf Yularen.
I really
Moth uniform.
Oh yeah.
I did really like, on the point of the ISB, I did really like how they got everyone up there. Like, we're gonna be up all night working on this thing. It's a big deal. It's very serious. And if you remember, speculation here, if you remember in the trailer, there's on either the first or second trailer, the opening is just this Imperial Star Destroyer opening on a planet. I'm pretty sure that's Dahlia or whatever the planet's called. I'm pretty sure that's the planet in that shot.
It is, because you see them looking up at it.
Yeah. So I'm fairly certain that they've opened a can of worms here, right? It's going to be no joke.
If we're going to see Krennic, that may be where he comes and he's going to be like, what's going on?
Yeah.
But I wonder what rank he's going to be by this point. That's the exciting part. And I have so many questions as the show goes on. And I think the best part about this is, like, unlike with Kenobi, Boba Fett, Mando, all of those, you kind of knew what was coming next because they always set it up, like, especially with Mandalorian, the end of the episode, it would set up like what's coming next, Sure. You'll find Ahsoka on this planet. You got to get the child back. It's like, okay, well, I know what we're doing next week.
Yes, they preview the next episode,
Yeah, so because these are in 3 arcs, now, like, throughout this 3-episode arc, I knew what the goal was. But now that it's done, I have no clue what we're doing next.
Where we go from there?
Not an idea. Like, obviously, you could take some pretty reasonable guesses as to who we're going to be spending time with. But even then, what are they doing? Because Mon Mothma mentioned in, like, episode, what was it, 3, that she had someone she wants to bring into their circle, and he's like, absolutely not. Well, who's that guy? Mm-hmm. And the Death Star is still being built right now. Mm-hmm. Who's in charge of that? Is it Galen? I have a theory that because in the beginning of Rogue One, Tarkin's like, the work has stalled, I need you to come back. What if they're going to use that excuse there to bring back the original Legends Death Star creator and throw him into canon now? That would be cool.
And that's a good point too, because the show doesn't stand on those little, like we talked about earlier on in the show, episode 1, 2, and 3. Like, the show doesn't stand on us hoping for cameos. They're just we've gotten a lot of nice little things, and nice little Star Wars references, but the show has really stood on its own kind of merit. And I do like about Andor, it's not every week. It's not. This is happening with a lot of shows. But it's not about the big reveal every week. It's not about who's the mystery guest, who's the big reveal. Mm-hmm. It's just like, okay, like, let's just sit down and watch this gritty kind of tension-filled hour. And that's exciting for me. It's fresh.
And to that point, we were all talking a couple of weeks ago about this comic book character that was supposed to show up. I just now remembered that. I'm so in on the story and what we're doing next. I don't care about these cameos. I'm not worried about who's going to be there. I'm like, what are we doing next? Because I don't know.
And guys, I'm going to call it right now. If indeed a familiar face will show up, whether it's Krennic, whether it's Dr. Aphra, whether it's Hera Syndulla, the way that they're approaching it, I have a strong feeling it's not going to be cameo-like. It's not going to be their fan servicey. It's not going to be there. Oh, you didn't like The Last Jedi? Let me give you this deep fake Luke. It's not going to be none of that crap. There's so much world building going on already. I almost feel like I'm watching the supplemental material to A New Hope. This show is the most like A New Hope to me, which felt the most experimental. When you look at Empire Strikes Back, Return of the Jedi, they have that very staple signature blockbuster Hollywood film quality to them. A New Hope feels a lot more like Criterion independent film, more like his THX movie than the Star Wars sequels of the original trilogy. And when you look at the show, they established so much, and we know so much history of the original Galactic Civil War. Then if you bring, let's say, Hera Syndulla, you could weave her into the plot. She doesn't need to, like, come in. It's like, hey, guys, by the way, I'm here. What's going on? And just bounce out. I hate when they do it because it's trivial. It trivializes the story. Here, the momentum they've picked up, I really hope they stick to their guns.
Yeah, and with that, if it is like Krennic or Tarkin, those, while they are called cameos, it makes sense because at a certain point in now, this is a big problem. You're going to, if the problem continues to get higher, you're going to need someone of higher command to come in and try to take control of the situation.
Yeah.
So I don't think we should be surprised if these well-known characters show up. It might even be Arenda Price. But to that point, they're in charge of this type of situation because that's what they're supposed to do.
Sure.
That's why they're here, helping to fix this problem, not for fan service. It's literally their job in universe.
Oh, makes sense. I do really like how one thing about this show that's really, I think, been a highlight for me is it's just showing the different aspects of the rebellion, like the different types of people, the different types of missions they did. At the same time, you have like the Rebels crew out doing their own thing. It's just a cool idea that like, this is how people were, this is how it started, right? People standing up here and trying things here. And, you have Luthen funding this mission to steal Imperial credits over, I just like that there's this different feel to what all these groups are trying, right? They're all trying some way to get a foothold. And I like that it fits, right? It wouldn't make sense if there was just one organized body that formed underneath the Empire overnight and just was like, okay, we're anti-Empire now. It's just kind of ragtag guerrilla warfare, which I really like. I like that as well. Because in episode 1, 2, and 3, we had a whole different aspect of the galaxy, a different crew, a different, problem, a different, they had, again, this very interesting concept of like hired security to manage planets. And it's like that community was kind of uprising over them or trying to stick it to them. And then we flash over here and this planet's firmly in Imperial control. And it's not really a well-developed, planet. It's more of a rural nomadic planet. And they're choking the life out. It's just interesting to see what this, it's interesting to see the logistics of the Empire. I mean, man, that Palpatine was a smart guy. He really had this, this plan going on. He really knew how to control. But I like how it just adds depth. It adds layers to it. It adds just a really, really detail that we didn't have before that I really enjoy.
Yeah. And the reason I want more seasons for the show, even though they kind of, played their hand and they showed us what's going to be, is there's always room to start off on this level, on the lowest echelons of the resistance, rebellion, and the Empire. And you can slowly build the show more closer to the center and introduce more significant figures.
Sure.
You could start with Andor. Yeah, and it is called Andor. We get it. He's going to remain the heart and soul of the show. But I really, really hope that if indeed it really picks up with the fans the way it seems to, they kind of like revise their format and they bring more. Maybe I'm just speaking out, not for the goodness of the show, but my own personal greediness. But it's like, I want more of this. Like, where else can you go? You could shoot off the first couple of seasons here, almost like the Clone Wars show, right? We started with kind of simplistic stuff and then it matured over the seasons.
And to that point, I'm so glad you said that because I was just thinking this, a lot of people have been calling Andor the adult Star Wars. I don't think it is, because the same reason that you just said. Clone Wars matured, not for the audience, because that's what the story was going to go. I was going to compare Andor to Rebels, because roughly the same time. I know Rebels takes place
You're close.
before this or after this, one of the two.
They're roughly the same time.
But it shows the two different sides of how this war is going. Yes, there are groups of rebel cells that work together and are, everything's going well. There's this other side of there are people in the rebellion that aren't good, like Skeen. And I think someone in the chat mentioned the same thing, not every rebel is good. Not every Imperial is bad. We've seen this before.
Yeah.
So that doesn't make Andor an adult Star Wars just because the story is boring or whatever you want to call it.
Sure.
It's just different ways. Like you can say the same thing about planet Earth. There are areas where everything's happy, nice, friendly, everyone gets along, and then there's some not so friendly areas. It's all happening at the same time, regardless of if it's meant for you as the audience. But like these are different stories that are still happening at the same time.
I think, to go off your point, Jimmy, I think the reason it gets labeled as the adult show, and I've called it the most mature Star Wars show, I don't think they don't craft the episodes to be entertaining to children. There's not humor or big set pieces that like a kid like who's 7 or 8 would be like, oh, like Jar Jar, it's fun, or ooh, cool clones, or ooh, lightsabers. The show doesn't cater to a younger audience. I think I like what you said though, Jimmy, as well about there's good rebels, there's bad rebels. That's what I enjoy about Andor. Like at the end, he shoots Skeen, kills him. He goes to Vel, and he's not like, hey, this just went down. You know, he betrayed us. Let's get these credits the right place. He's like, give me my money. I'm getting out of here. Like, he's not this good guy. He's not that he's a bad person, but he's very much self-preserving. He's not like it's not overnight, one mission. He's like, you know what? Rebel born and bred, baby. Let's take these credits out here. Let's get on the ship and go. He's like, shoots the guy. He's like, give me my money. I'm getting out of here. He's holding him up at gunpoint. Like, he's not
because you got to think about it. Like, Skeen just turned on me. I don't trust you now.
Exactly. But that makes sense. Like, other shows would take the route where it's like, this is our hero. He does the right thing. And this is a good crew. And it's like, no, I can't trust anyone. I'm getting out of here. Get my money. I'm getting out. I'm leaving. And I really like that the show doesn't shy away from that. They don't make Andor overly good. He's not like some beacon of hero who always makes the perfect decision.
Exactly. Very much. He's not supposed to be.
Exactly.
I want to add a thought to what you said about Rebels. Is that even though Rebels is a show for kids, right? Mm-hmm. Like Josh said, you know, Andor is not, I would say, even for a typical casual Star Wars fan. It's a lot different stylistically. Yes. But with both, the formats are different. Rebels is obviously, you know, family, children oriented show. This one is not. But Rebels has a lot of very mature themes. Emotionally, what happens to him, especially things revolving Darth Vader, how Darth Maul tries to corrupt his mind. I'm like, oh man, I had to look twice at it. I couldn't believe it how dark it got. Mm-hmm. So I think, at least as personally as far as I'm concerned, when I say that Andor is mature, I'm not saying mature in terms of that M rating. I mean mature as in its thinking has evolved. It's understanding what the idea behind the show is. That has matured. Because I would 100% agree with you. Both the Clone Wars and Rebels has very mature stuff in it.
It does. Absolutely.
And to that point, you know, it's almost like I'm not going to say like it's not obviously adult oriented, but it's like it's telling the same story. It's just from very different ways of telling. It's, you know, you tell a kid, you know, oh, well, babies are brought from storks and they draw, you know, it changes. It's the same story. It just gets more grown up as you go. Yeah. And it turns into the idea that, you know, like Star Wars is fun, but for the people that live in this universe, exactly, it's not.
Yeah.
So, you know, I think all the time, it's like, oh, what would if I were in Star Wars, you know, I'd be a pilot, I'd probably be a smuggler, you know, screw the Empire. I'd fight them off. And then you watch this and you're like, it's not always going to be what it's meant to be. Your whole crew is never always going to just barely escape the clutches of doom.
Exactly. Yeah. Like they did in
Rebels. And it really gives you like that second thought of, you're like, you know, wow, this Star Wars isn't so safe.
Like in Rebels, they need to hear that, hey, you know what, the good guys are going to win the day.
Exactly.
There's still going to be hope. It's like you slowly kind of build them up to it, right? You build them up from Rebels to Andor.
Yes, agreed. And it puts the war in Star Wars. Like, this is what war is. Jimmy's right. Like, we always, like, we'd be the force wielder with a lightsaber, you know, we'd be the hotshot pilot. Yeah. And it's like, no, you'd probably be, you know, Nemec, who's like writing a book and they get crushed to death in a cargo.
And even then to say, you know, like with Clone Wars, like saying like the Clone Wars show aged with its audience. Not entirely true, because now if I sit down over summer vacation and show a 7-year-old Clone Wars, he'll binge the entire thing in a month. And he'll come out the other side pretty scarred. He's still going to be 7.
Hey, Revenge.
I'm not going to make him watch season 1. Wait till he's 8. We'll put on season 2.
I you know, we've said a lot about it, and again, I think we're going to be repeating ourselves a lot throughout the show, because I think what it does well, it just continues to do well. Now we're going to take a different arc starting next week, so we'll see where things are going. Overall, I'm very impressed, and I would say it feels like we've gotten 2 mini Star Wars movies, 2 like hour and a half Star Wars movies. 1, 2, 3, and then 4, 5, 6. We've gotten like hour and a half, hour and 45 minutes, their own little movies, and they've been grounded and in an appropriate budget and on a good scale. And I hear sometimes that the show isn't performing well from a streaming numbers perspective, and that the reason that bothers me is not because I don't compare it to other shows. Like, well, it should be getting more views than Kenobi. Of course not. Kenobi's got a ton of star power, or it should be getting more than a Marvel show. It's not that. The reason I get frustrated is like, I want Star Wars to make more projects like this. Even if they don't hit the widest audience, I want this kind of quality and storytelling, number 1. And number 2, I'm sad for the people who haven't watched this yet because it doesn't have some big known character on the cover. It doesn't have Boba Fett or Mando or someone exciting. It's just this average guy. I'm sad they're missing some of the best Star Wars storytelling I've seen. I'm sad that they're missing some of the depth that the Star Wars universe contains, whether it's in books or shows or comics. Like there is this type of Star Wars out there. There isn't just the Star Wars that's those trilogies that come out every 15 years. There's also this really fascinating take on what it would be like to be in a galaxy at war. And that's why I get sad if this show is not performing well. And I think it's performing fine. I think Disney knew it wasn't going to get a ton of viewers. They knew that. They're not foolish. I hope more shows like this get made. I hope if you're a casual fan who happened to stumble on this video, or you have casual fans in your life, that they check it out. Because I think it's some of my favorite Star Wars I've ever enjoyed. I really enjoy it because it's so different and so fresh. So that's my 2 cents on it. I hope everyone's enjoying as much as we are. I will say, before I have Jimmy give us his update on the High Republic, we are only just a handful of weeks away, 2 weeks away from Tales of the Jedi. Tales of the Jedi on October 26th. So we are going to get these shorts at the same time Andor is running. So that's, that's going to be a whole different.
We're going to be busy.
That's going to be a whole different part of Star Wars that I enjoy. And I'm expecting a lot from this.
Unfortunately.
Well. What's up?
I'll miss those. I'll be overseas.
Oh, no. For how long? How long are you going to be
At
gone?
my brother's wedding. I'm going up from 25th until November 16th.
Okay.
Wow.
Well,
great, guys. Yeah. From Star Wars.
The good news is you're patient, Ben. You're more patient than Jimmy and I, or we'd have a problem here. So you're good.
Yeah.
So you are good. Well, exciting nonetheless. I do, as we have covered Andor and we've covered Disney Plus, I do want to talk a little bit about the High Republic. Now, Ben, I am not caught up on the High Republic. Are you at this point?
No, I'm still missing 2 young reader books from our previous wave, and I just got this one in the mail.
It's a great cover.
Yeah, great cover. I didn't get to read it yet, but
I haven't either.
But yeah, I'm doing my Dragonlance reading at the time.
And the new Marvel comic dropped today as well, or yesterday as well. Excuse me. So that leaves Jimmy as the sole reader of the High Republic. Here, let me 1 second here. Let's wait.
The custodian of Star Wars.
All right, here we go. Jimmy,
I'm all caught up.
So Jimmy, without going into spoilers, you have reviews up on the channel for the High Republic, going hundreds of years in the past. Why don't you just tell us so far, phase 2? What have you liked? What have you not? How's it going so far as we've kicked off this new phase?
Phase 2 is so different from phase 1. I could say that it copies the very same super basic outline of you need some kind of a conflict, and it does take a page out of phase 1 and just start, it starts off with a bang and it really grabs your attention. The stakes are scary high, surprisingly. Like the Path of Deceit, there's a reason this book came first, and now I understand why they were all saying that, because it really, in the words of Luke, this is not going to go the way you think.
So it's kind of the Light of the Jedi that kicks off this big kind of event. Is it that same kind of feeling where it kind of kicked it off?
Well, that's the funny part. The big event that we're going to be getting isn't going to happen until Convergence.
Okay.
And as some of you know, the first 4 chapters of Convergence are out. You can read them. Excuse me. You do not need to read Path of Deceit to read Convergence, at least not the first 4 chapters that I've read.
Sure.
But there will be another big conflict issue. That's just how it's going to be.
Sure.
But it's based on how phase 1 goes. This is going to be a very dreary phase.
Oh,
very, probably really dark and really sad.
Exciting.
And I have so many questions that I want to ask myself out loud, but I don't want to spoil it for anybody.
Yeah.
But I will say Path of Deceit. Wow. Justina Ireland and Tessa Gratton did a hell of a job as a tag team bringing that story together, because it focuses on everything that you would not expect it to. And as a result, that improves the reading.
Okay.
Convergence, Zoraida Cordova, she has written one book that I'm aware of and a couple short stories in the From a Certain Point of View books, but she wrote Crash of Fate, which is really good. But these 4 chapters, I was not expecting to go the way it did. Again, this two times I was just caught off guard with, ooh, it's doing, never mind. like my guesses were over here. The actual plot's right here.
Okay.
Much of a difference of what was actually going to happen. And the Marvel comic that was released yesterday, all of these books and comics, they're introducing us to all different characters across the board. So it is going to be a little bit of a juggle like it was with Phase 1. I think it's for the better, though, because I think they will intertwine at some points, but these stories do feel very separated.
I like that.
To start with, and we're getting to see really interesting characters, really cool, different philosophies on the Force. That's really fun. And just...
I always like that.
New worlds that are really crazy cool. So I'm really enjoying it.
Let me ask you this, and then I'll see if Ben has any questions. You texted me when you started reading. You said it doesn't feel like other Star Wars books. It doesn't feel almost very Star Warsy. What did you mean by that? Is it just kind of different planets? You talked about different ideologies with the Force.
It felt somewhat, think of like Visions. Visions is Star Wars, but it at times doesn't feel like it. It's not a bad thing. We're seeing a whole new perspective, because we know the Path of the Open Hand. We know about them. We talked about them on, through Star Wars Celebration and forward. They're a group that's dead set on setting the Force free. That's what the promos have been saying. What it really is, it's a group of people that know what the Force is, but they don't think that anyone should have the ability to control it. They think the Force wills your destiny. You should not be altering that.
I like that.
Having this completely different ideology, and like even me myself, I'm reading it going, you're insane. Because I'm on the side of the Jedi and how the Force is used with them. So it's a very conflicting ideals. And when they're clashing, I'm like, my brain is instantly taking a side and saying, you are out of your mind for thinking X, Y, and Z. And like, I'm loving that I'm getting these reactions out of these books. Like, and I think it does help that I have like audio. I'm doing audio books. So like, I can't like accidentally look at the next page and see what happens. I'll be sitting there in the cooler at work. So there's no one around me. And I'm like yelling out loud. I'm like, you're delusional. It doesn't work that way. And I'm just like, this book is getting a reaction out of me. This is fantastic.
Cool. Very cool. Ben, any questions on your side?
Yeah, definitely. There were a couple of sects and cults that are introduced in Legends. Jimmy, I will be excited to talk to you about those when you get to them. But guys, correct me if I'm wrong. If I remember my prequels well, and it's not to throw a shade on the prequels. I just want to situate myself in what to expect from the High Republic next. Mace Windu at one point mentioned something along the lines that there has been peace for thousands of years as far as the Jedi confronting Sith is concerned, right?
Mm-hmm.
So from what we've read from Phase 1, the galaxy has never been devoid of conflicts.
Sure.
Maybe not necessarily dark side users, right? So as far as you're reading this book, The Path of Deceit, it doesn't uproot that idea from prequels that there's indeed been 1,000 years of peace as far as the Force wielders are concerned.
Yeah, so...
You know what I'm asking?
Right, so, like... Even then, like, because, it kind of borders that with the Nihil in Phase 1, there's no conflict yet. All of the Jedi are fighting the Nihil. Mm-hmm. But I think it's more so in that case, the Clone Wars and the Galactic Civil War, galaxy-wide war.
Sure.
The fight with the Nihil, it's very secluded, even though it is disastrous.
More to the outer realm as well.
And I think it's different this time around because with Phase 2, we're learning about the Path of the Open Hand. This is the beginnings of something. This is the start of something. Whereas in the High Republic, the Nihil is already at large and they're somewhat known, at least not to the inner core, but the outer core, they're afraid of these pirates, these bandits. They're really not too much of a threat as compared to a Sith controlling an entire army or the Sith Wars from the Old Republic. So they do have their stakes, and once you finish Path of Deceit, you start to understand this is going to get dangerous, but not at the scale that people think. It's almost as if, there is an enemy in this. It's not everyone though.
Got it.
It is very targeted, and it's.
There were a couple of instances also where Luke would venture out, or they would stumble across a planet where they need to resolve a conflict, and it's pretty much a localized problem, like
exactly
a Yevitha cult, which are like, oh, there's this superior being which can alter and warp the Force in very unexpected ways. And a lot of fans back in the day found those books cheesy. I personally like them. I always enjoy Force-related cults.
Me too.
So I'm looking forward to it. I'll see how that is going to work.
Yeah, so you get a lot of that in the comic. It's not too much of a spoiler because it is mentioned in some of the
only
books,
issue 1 as well. So
yeah, it's more so there are other sects and groups that have the Force and can use it, but don't call it the Force. They have a different name for it and a different ideology around it. And it's very much reminiscent of, religious beliefs that we actually have between all over the world. A lot of them tell the same story, but with different names and all that. It's very much like that. And it's just really cool because they all have that same look to them. They're all dressed completely different. They all have different robes for monks and ambassadors and all that kind of stuff for this group that worships, some of them call it the Force, or the Truth Sayer is what some of them call it. And it's just like hearing all these different names. It's like, wow, it feels very much like some like old Republic style Star Wars, because especially with this comic, because it's only 350 years before the Phantom Menace, but nothing seems very recognizable. And I think that's the part that gets me with this. It feels very fresh because while it is Star Wars, it doesn't feel like it because it's in a whole different part of the galaxy that we just haven't had the chance to see yet, especially with Jedha.
I always root for this kind of reinventing. Again, I understand some people who are hold on to the dear expanded universe legends. They don't want anything changed. I get that, but I always stood for reinventing the formula, reinvigorating and making it different. I guess it's maybe my experience reading Marvel and DC comics. Same with Star Wars when they jumped in with the whole High Republic. Like, dude, if you want to change things around, don't mince words. Go right into it. Obviously you have to understand the source material and respect it and understand the core ideas that George Lucas was motivated by, but in a way that makes sense. I mean, that's exactly what it sounds like from you describing. They keep pushing the ideas. They keep reinvigorating. Sometimes you even have to push against the fans. And maybe it will not stick with this current generation. Maybe the new generation of fans will pick it up and say like, oh man, this is really fun.
And the cool thing about it is like, especially when it comes to the Jedi, it's like the ideologies, you read them in the High Republic and you're like, that's not how it was in the original trilogy or the prequels or the sequels. And you can see now with phase 2 the progression of how the ideals changed slowly over time.
Nice.
And I'm like, they're actively putting forth the effort to say like, at one point we were here, we have changed since then, so it makes more sense. And I'm like, okay, it's something else. It's such a fresh take. It feels like the High Republic. It does not feel like phase 1. It feels very separate.
Well, I'll tell you, I love what you said about, I love the idea that there were different kind of sects around the Force. Makes total sense that over hundreds of years, if the galaxy is as big and as broad as it is in Star Wars, and back in hundreds of years before, maybe even communication was more limited, which they've kind of established in this wave, that they don't have the same kind of unified galactic body. It's way more scarce. And so the sharing of ideas would be more limited. And so it's less likely that these ideals behind the Force, the Sith and the Jedi, why prevalent, would not be the only ones. There'd be groups who had come up with their own world experience. So I really enjoy that quite a bit. So before I take Jimmy off the big screen here, Jimmy, you said there was a new Vision comic that came out this week. You said it was really good.
Indeed.
Okay. When did it come out?
Came out yesterday, the same time as the High Republic comic. To anyone that wasn't aware, Marvel is doing a run of Star Wars Visions comics.
Nice.
I do not know if it's going to center around one particular short, as it's just called Star Wars Visions. But yes, issue 1 dealt with our good guy Ronan here, or I guess you can call him bad guy, and it is so good. I have to say as little as possible because there's an Easter egg and it's so perfectly placed that it's so hard to not say anything. Like, I don't think I've ever been this tripped up over something that I just like. It was so artistically done. Heyo.
I think it's a Japanese author too, isn't
it? At the very bottom, it should have the author's name. Takashi Okazaki. Yeah, so Takashi Okazaki is the writer and the illustrator. So he did the whole thing himself.
Cool.
And yes, the comic is in black and white with the exception of accented colors when necessary, like a lightsaber or droid lights. Everything else, it's black and white. Very much does look like manga, yeah.
Nice.
But
cool.
I was expecting it to be cool. Like, I thought he worked on Afro Samurai. Why didn't I mention that? That explains a lot of the art style you see, though. But
yeah,
it's just so crazy how much this blew me away. Like, I enjoyed The Duel. I read the Ronin book, and that was really good. And this is acting as a prequel to The Duel. So you have this comic, and then you would have The Duel, and then you would have the book Ronin. So like he's getting his own pretty fleshed out story.
He's really going deep with him. Yeah.
And I'm so glad they have, because this is so interesting. And the cool thing is I want this separate from Star Wars. I want this as its own thing.
Yeah.
Well, like, keep the Star Wars Visions title, but this story
yeah.
is crazy. And some of the visuals we get, because, in The Duel, we had these stormtroopers that looked like, bandits. They're wearing like broken stormtrooper armor.
Yep.
You get more callbacks to Star Wars familiarity in this, in ways that when you see it, you're like, oh, that is so cool. And it truly pains me that I can't just say some of these things, because one of these Easter eggs, it's pretty glaring when you think about it. Yeah. But when you put everything together, I haven't seen anyone else say anything. So I'm like, if I'm the first person that noticed all of these things, I'm so proud of myself, because I was sitting here like jumping up and down, like they did that and it worked perfectly. It's beautiful.
Well, Jim, if there's one lesson to learn, like we learned from Andor, is that life is painful, and sometimes you just can't talk about your favorite Star Wars comic.
It's true. It's very true.
Well, I got to tell you, just to as we transition off the comics, this was not on my radar at all. I knew it was coming out. I wasn't, I wasn't going to read it day one. But it's exciting that it's worked so well for you, Jimmy, and that makes me want to read it. And we've got a lot of that, and that's the thing.
And I was going to say, it's 31 pages.
Okay.
It goes by so fast.
Yeah, comics really do.
There's some good like heavy dialogue sections in there, but I was so invested that I flew through it. The High Republic comic took me like 3 times as long to read. There is a lot more dialogue in there, and I wanted to ingest it, but with that, it was just bang, 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 bang.
Well, exciting. And again, it goes to what we talk about all the time. There's Star Wars out there for you if you like it. If you just want to read Legends, they re-release them, with new covers if you're into collecting. If you just want to watch, shows like Andor, which are really mature, those are there too. If you want to read, Star Wars samurai, what if stories like Visions, you got that. So it's just nice they've given the fans options there. And so I'm very excited that Jimmy has been holding down the fort on the new releases. We thank you.
It's Jimmy. What I do.
We thank you, Jimmy, for keeping us up to speed. Go ahead, Ben. Oh, okay. You were giving us some Star Trek references off the stream. Only Star Wars here. No, I'm just kidding.
Says the guy who mentions House of the Dragon.
It's true. I do mention other shows. Speaking of which, Dune. There is going to be. Just kidding. Just kidding. There is. There's a huge spot in my heart for Dune. I am a big 2020.
I love how you just after it came out, we spoke about it, and once again, thank you for the book present. It was very lovely.
That's right.
Like how you became a devout convert after like one movie.
I did.
We need to talk about this movie. Like between each time we started to roll like the live stream, we talk about.
See, and that's how I got my roommate into Star Wars, because he was like, I just don't think it's for me. But when Episode 7 was coming out, I had shared a meme of Han Solo, and it said, either you like Star Wars or you're wrong. And he was like, people can have opinions, Jimmy. And I was like, wait.
Not about this.
Not about this.
We had a mutual friend who really wanted to see Episode 7, and he took Brian to see it. And when he got out of the theater, within the week, he had seen all the movies, and in like 3 weeks' time, he had gathered the same amount of knowledge of Star Wars that I had my entire life. And I was like, I am so proud of you.
Well, the internet made that possible, back in the day.
Yeah. He had it all at his fingertips. Exactly. And I was just like, I am.
Back in my days, boys and girls.
That's the best part. Because, there are people who's like, well, I had to wait for mine. I was just like, I'm so proud of you for absorbing all of this. Now I can talk to you.
It's funny. Well, hey, Dune is not for everyone, but it was for me. And I like those kind of movies, just like the Batman. Those are my kind of movies. Really dark, depressing, brooding movies. That's what I like, and that's why I like Andor, because it's dark, brooding, and depressing too, in all the right ways. Yeah, it's actually not even dark here. I actually just black out the windows now to keep it dark. Like
Are you going through some white nights right now?
I'll tell you one thing. One thing that's nice about Andor is, with the color palette is we talked about, intentionally dark. But I do enjoy the fact that I can see it, because there are some shows out right now, I'm not going to point fingers, that when they have scenes that are dark, I can't see a single thing on my screen. House of the Dragons, it's you.
AVPR.
I can't see anything going on. So credit to Andor for keeping the lighting accessible for the viewers. Guys, what else? That was what I had to talk about this week. Any other Star Wars news? Anything on your mind before we wrap out this wonderful mid-October week?
Do we know how many episodes the season is going to be?
12.
Oh, 12. So it's okay. We're halfway through.
You get 2 more arcs, basically. 2 more 3-episode arcs.
I'm trying to figure out the logistics. So my uncle in Israel, Roman, he's a huge sci-fi buff.
Really?
He absorbs everything fantasy and sci-fi. He has like Netflix over there, everything. He's very fluent in English. He works in Intel. Okay. He has, oversees the whole floor of computer chip makers. I'm going to try, if I can't review it, if I can't be YouTubing much, I'll probably pre-record a couple of videos, just throw them out there.
Throw them out there. Yeah.
But as far as watching it, I'll try to figure out logistics of hey, maybe I can still be on point of, keep up with Andor. And after I come back, if we get the chance to live stream, if you guys don't mind, I mean, keep doing, the live stream by yourself. But maybe we'll kind of reconvene and analyze the whole show and say okay, here are our 3-episode arcs. Here is the whole season. What do we think?
Yep.
I think it'll be a nice conclusion, analyzing the entire show.
Yeah, sounds great. I'm excited for that. Very excited for that. Jimmy, any other Star Wars news? I mean, you've been so deep in the comics and books. Anything else on your mind?
Just look for, I've got a review of the Visions comic coming out tomorrow morning, and later in the day I have a follow-up video discussing the Easter egg I mentioned earlier, because it was worthy of its own video. So look for those tomorrow. As far as anything else new, I'm going to be reading Death Troopers for the first time in years. I don't remember anything about the book, and I think that would be a fun Halloween review.
Yes.
So that might be coming out in a week or so. Yeah.
Spooky season is upon us. Cool. Well, everyone in chat, thank you guys for being here tonight. We love talking about it. We enjoy being on here. There's so much Star Wars content out there, so many content creators. It's fun to have you guys spend time with us talking through these things real time as fans of the shows, fans of Star Wars as well. Always fun to get everyone's perspective on these outside of our own. It is, it's enlightening. It's eye-opening. It's cool. It's a good time. So we appreciate your support. We're looking forward to more Andor. Again, Tales of the Jedi. I'm going to tell you what, Jimmy and I are going to react to every episode. We're going to react, and we're going to put them up on the channel because they're going to be short. So let's do it. Let's have fun with it together. So be on the lookout for that. And then when Ben returns from his trip, we will talk all things Andor wrap up, Tales of the Jedi wrap up, and we will enjoy the reminiscing. You'll be here next week though, Ben, correct?
Fear is the mind killer. Don't forget.
Yeah. Dude, I get that reference now. No, I'm kidding.
I'll be here next. I leave on the 25th.
Okay, so one more episode. So we'll see where Andor takes us next week. I have a feeling the stakes are going to continue to get higher. I like that Andor seems to be getting himself trapped. Like he kind of is now trapped in this web.
I have one last thing we got to throw in
us
here.
With it.
I just remember I sent you a picture on Twitter, Josh. I need you to pull it up.
Oh, I know where you're going with this.
Okay.
Not Dune related?
No, it's about the latest Andor episode. It was one of the Imperial officers that we saw, and when he gets it pulled up, I will make my point. I'm glad Josh already knows where I'm going with this.
Yeah, you told me.
Oh, I did tell you.
What's going on here?
Why is this guy Ben?
That's me.
This guy looks.
He said it looks like you.
All right,
He's like,
all right. I'll be fair. Give me 10 years. Let me enjoy my hair for a little bit more. It's receding already, but it's still there.
He's got hair.
I
just snagged this image so you can see his face.
Tell me which way to turn, because I'm gonna look at the camera.
Let's see. Here, give me 1 second here. Give me 1 second. How do I switch? I don't want Jimmy up here. I want Ben. Can I switch? Can I switch Jimmy out?
I'll wait. Don't worry about it.
Let's see. Remove Jimmy. Remove.
Oh, what happened? No. Okay, I need to turn this way, right?
Yeah, you nailed it. It looked good.
Oh man,
all right.
It looked great.
I'm not taking offense. I'm actually enjoying the fact that I am in Star Wars. You guys are not.
That's right. That's true.
Give me a solid. Give me like 10 years. I want to enjoy this, whatever this is. How do you call it? The Gray Fox or?
That's
whatever?
it. That's
Silver
it.
Fox,
Enjoy. Yeah.
Silver Fox.
Hey, you're in, Ben. You've made it before Jimmy and I did.
Yeah, but he kind of does though. He has those like Middle Eastern features as well.
He does, yeah.
You know what I also like? Like, sorry to prolong it. When you look at like smaller role Imperials, there once again harkens back to the original trilogy, where it's still the performances are meaningful. They each one adds a notch. Like you feel like this is real military compound.
Yep, I agree with that. That's well said. And closing thought.
And I really enjoyed that small role. You know, they gave me like 2-3 days to shoot. And
Ben's like, now we know why Ben likes Andor so much. He was actually on set.
I like
the true shill.
I'll tell you one last closing. That's what happens if you shill Star Wars on YouTube. They put you in the shows. It's amazing.
Yeah.
I'll tell you one last closing thought for us tonight. Did Andor canonize heart attacks in Star Wars? You seen any heart attacks before? I don't think so. Turns out heart attacks exist in Star Wars too.
No, wait. Isn't one of the not Arinda Price, one of the animated characters like had something with a heart? No?
Maybe.
Am I tripping?
You might be correct.
I'm thinking Rebels.
You might be correct.
There was an explosion, an attack, and one of the people was like, and they like fainted.
You might be correct. But he held his arm. He went down. It just shows you guys. You can't. Got to take care of yourselves. Eat your vegetables. Get your exercise in, or you'll end up like that evil Imperial.
And don't join the Empire.
I don't know if this comment is true because I saw someone discussing another scene about that in something else. I'm gonna have to look at that. But
heart attack, right?
No, the canonized
pee. No one had peed in Star Wars until this episode.
No.
I mean, also, Andor is just really making Star Wars appeal to us. We got Ben in the show, people dying of heart attacks. We got people going to the bathroom. Like, this is my Star Wars. This is us living it, guys.
I'm glad to oblige, guys.
You can tell we've gone too long on the stream because we're going off the rails here. Thank you guys so much for being here. I will just close it with, I think, maybe one kind of final thought. You know, maybe one kind of thing to leave us with here. All right, everyone. Make sure you have a great rest of your night. We'll see y'all again.
Hello there.
Very soon.
Hello.